If you want to have a strong immune system, what you've got to do is be exposed to microorganisms. When we look at children that are growing up in the ghetto versus children that are growing up in upper income families or neighborhoods, the ones in the ghetto have a much stronger immune system.
Welcome to Fruiting Body Podcast with your host, Brendan. Today we have a lovely returning guest, Dr. Thomas Lodi. I think he was on episode somewhere between 10 to 20 back in August, September. We've brought him back by popular demand. I just made that up, but I'm sure it's up there. No, actually, I've talked to a lot of people and they said, bring him back. Shout out to Bella Riddell. Bella said she loved this podcast. Actually, your podcast on our, I can measure it on our Spotify. It has like the most views, most listens. We always forget to say we are a medicinal supplement company. We actually will have product coming out soon. We'll just be doing lion's mane, reishi, and cordyceps as a basic product. And then we have some really cool nootropics coming out with those mixes. I'm going to keep it very simple for you guys. Just 6 products. And we'll explain that all later. Again, welcome to the show. Don't forget to subscribe. Where is it here? Smash the like, hit that bell notification, and let's get this party started. Okay, Dr. Thomas, thanks a lot for joining us or coming back again. Like we explained before, we're just going to chat, and there's no real direction on this one today. So since the last time you went on, we had some discussions about some marketing you were doing, and it looks like you've kind of moved forward and you've done some interesting content on YouTube. Could you recap maybe some of the latest topics that you are discussing and why?
Well, actually, I'm not sure what shows up ultimately on YouTube because I've been doing mostly live streams, and I think what they do is
someone's bringing them over from your Instagram then.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's Instagram, Facebook. It's a simultaneous live stream on both.
Yeah.
And it's in Thailand, it's every Monday morning at 7 a.m., which is East Coast is 8 p.m.
Maybe you can explain, and might as well while we're talking about it, for people that want to find you on Instagram to find this live stream and this content and YouTube, how can they find you?
Well, I'm at Dr. Thomas Lodi, I think.
I think it's quite easy, yeah.
Yeah, at Dr. Thomas Lodi.
I've typed it in before. If you just kind of go on Instagram and type in Dr. Thomas Lodi and type the same on YouTube, it comes up right away.
Yeah. And so I just do live streams where it's the basic format is question and answer. So I get a lot of questions sent in to me. But I usually, not all the time, but maybe 90% of the time have a topic I want to talk about a little bit at the beginning. So recently some of the topics that I've talked about, of course it's all related to cancer, but like estrogen receptor positive cancers, certain drugs, chemotherapy. Should I have a chemotherapy? Is it ever useful? How about radiation, radiotherapy? Is there a place for it? Surgery, I got to have surgery because I can't go to the bathroom. Blocking, So yeah, so I discuss certain topics like that. I discuss immunotherapies, and that's very important, especially now with our current situation on this planet.
Good word usage.
Is to have your immunity. In fact, you always want to have your immunity in the most powerful mode it can be, and it's very interesting. If you think about you want to have muscles, right? You want to be buff. You're going to go to the gym and you're going to do resistance training. And if you do resistance training, you're going to develop muscles, okay? If you want to be smart, you're going to read books, you're going to debate, you're going to attend seminars, you're going to do things like that.
Watch your YouTube videos.
Right? Watch my YouTube videos. Exercise your brain,
yeah.
Right? If you want to have a strong immune system, what you've got to do is be exposed to microorganisms. That's what it's all about. And it's very interesting that when we look at, and these are published studies, when we look at children that are growing up in the ghetto versus children that are growing up in either middle to upper income families or neighborhoods, the ones in the ghetto have a much stronger immune systems. They don't get atopy, they don't get allergies, they don't get all those things that the rich kids get. And
Yep.
that's because the rich kids are living in sterile environments, everything's scrubbed and washed, and their immune system really doesn't get a chance to work out. So you can imagine if you're born into that kind of family and everything is being washed before you get it, um, and you might, hopefully you had a vaginal birth, you came through your mother's vaginal canal, because if you did that, then you got her microorganisms, and that's very, very important. So, but a lot of people now are getting C-sections. People are even getting C-sections just because they don't want to, for their husband's sake. So their husband still.
Yeah, we had a natural birthing doctor on, recommended by Wade, Dr. Robert Bitter, and he really dug deep into the natural birthing process as well,
Right.
and the importance of that.
The importance, and then breastfeeding. Yeah. So, and then breastfeeding, you also get some passive immunity, but the immune system needs to be strong. So, for example, think about it when you, a lot of health products have colostrum. Now, the reason they have colostrum from cows is because cows, if you look at them, if you watch them, they've got their face in the dirt and the feces all day long. That's where their face is. So they have a continual exposure to microorganisms. So their immune systems are really powerful. In fact, all animals are. We know that many animals eat their own feces. Not all the time, but they'll eat it periodically because they instinctively know that they need to get back some microorganisms. So
is that also because of the soil you're getting natural vitamin B as well? That's really building up the immune system. Or
right. Well, yeah. So for example, vitamin B12
yes
is a substance that's produced only by microorganisms. It's not produced by animals. So when they say, well, he's a vegan, so he's going to be B12 deficient, so that proves that veganism is not natural. Well, it turns out that you didn't get it from the cow or the bull that you ate. The bull got it from the microorganisms that it ate. And what we've learned about these organisms that produce cyanocobalamin, which is B12, they live right now, in most of us, we'll find them in our colons. And they can produce it, but we can't absorb it in our colons. We can only absorb it in our ileum, which is the last part of the small intestines.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can somehow get those microorganisms to migrate northward, north of the ileocecal valve into the small intestines, and then they're producing the B12, you'll be able to absorb it.
Can you do that naturally?
You can do that by changing your diet to a vegetarian diet. By doing that, by having more fiber, by changing all that, you change your gut flora, actually. And these guys become plentiful and they migrate. So, and that's a good topic.
So typically, let's say your diet, I know we spoke about this before, and maybe you should quickly explain like your position as well as being involved in integrative oncology. That is your background, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just so in case anyone's their first time listening to you on this podcast, can you talk about your diet and specifically why and how that also ties into you're discussing this part of the colon and being able to produce B12 naturally?
Right. Well, strangely enough, the topic of what humans should eat is still being debated. And I really I can't comprehend it. But because when we look at ourselves anatomically and physiologically, we are vegetarian. And that's because of the length of our small intestines, the fact that we still have a cecum. It's not a large cecum, but we still have a cecum. We have a fairly large colon. And if you look at animals, you'll realize that they can get what you eat and what is absorbed in your small intestines is quick. You get quick energy. So, for example, let's look at some of our cousins: the chimp, the bonobo, the orangutan, and the gorilla. Okay, so the chimp and the orangutan, both of them, their relationship between their thumbs and their other fingers, the thumb is way down here. It's like to hear.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way they can grip. I mean, that they can oppose and have any fine movement, right? The gorilla is like us. The gorilla has that ability to do this. And if you watch a gorilla is sitting on the ground, not moving around a lot. They hang out on the ground. and they're picking apart things. They need that to pick apart and pull and all that. They need that dexterity. Well, the orangutan and the chimp, they just have these really long fingers, 4 fingers, and this one is just to grab on the bottom, and they're swinging around. So they're swinging in the trees and they're eating fruit. And so therefore the relationship of their small intestine to their large intestine is larger. They have a larger, the ratio is larger because what they're doing is they're absorbing energy at a quick rate. And look at them. They're more energetic. They're swinging around and they're
compared to the gorilla.
Compared to the gorilla. The gorilla's just hanging out.
Yeah.
And the gorilla is what we call a hindgut fermenter. So he's sitting on the ground, he or she, sitting on the ground. And by the way, this may be politically incorrect, but
I mean,
but I have to say it, and that is, there are no trans
gorillas.
There were no trans gorillas,
Not yet.
and there's no gay gorillas, and there's no. But I'm not saying that's bad.
Do you think there are no?
No, there are. Actually, I have a cat that's gay.
Yeah,
So-
I've heard. My Bella told me her dog was gay. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, but maybe that's like it's changing based on the owners. I don't know.
I have 2 males and 1 female cat,
Yeah.
and the one male's always on the male.
Mm.
Doesn't even go near the female. So yeah, so
You know,
so so that sort of thing. But just think about it in terms of our ability to persist as a species. We need to have heterosexual things, otherwise there's going to be no children. Until I guess we're coming up to the point where we don't need that. We can just remove sperm and eggs and do it in the dish, and we're all done. We can.
Well, I was reading some article, and again, I think we're going to go on a lot of like different tangents and maybe come back to the topics. But I was reading an article that there's something in our food and our water that they've been giving us for the past 100 years that is basically making men become more feminine by lowering our testosterone levels. Whether that's again by the food. Do you have any thoughts of that? Have you read about this?
Yeah. Well, no. Well, there is. I'm not sure the length of time it's been going on. But there are a lot of substances that we're fed that are hormone disruptors.
Is that done on purpose, and if so, why?
Yeah. Well, it's done on purpose, and it was done also, but a lot of it was found by accident, because what they were doing is in the processing of foods and making it cheaper so they can make more money. They found that, and then just their scientific studies, they found out, it also lowers sperm count and those sorts of things.
So they weren't doing it intentionally at that time.
They probably both. Doing it intentionally.
Because Phil, I introduced you to Phil.
Yeah.
He was on the podcast. I do recall him explaining that this kind of happened during the army after World War II because you needed rations. They needed to be able to travel with these preservative products, and then that kind of carried over back into the how you have that 1950s housewife and how can you make quick dinners fast and stuff like that, which involves the preservatives, therefore in the end inevitably lowering testosterone because you've added all this shit to your food.
But it's not only lowering testosterone, because testosterone is just one of the cholesterol becomes pregnenolone becomes DHEA, or pregnenolone can go this way and become progesterone and then become cortisol. But anyway, so the DHEA down to testosterone, estrogens, and the estrogens, which are estrone, estradiol, and estriol. So you can do that. So what's being damaged actually is the DHEA, and then the metabolic pathways in which they travel. So you wind up. So for example, if I give too much DHEA to a female, she might wind up getting masculinized. Whereas with a male, it's going to have a different effect. So because DHEA is also necessary to produce cortisol, So anyway,
so should we be supplementing DHEA, or how can we get that naturally?
Yeah, mostly. Naturally, it comes in plants, just like estrogens come in plants.
But you see these DHEA pills. I usually, if I buy supplements, I like this company called Life Extensions. I just find their quality is quite good. It's expensive, let's say, for a supplement, but is it okay to supplement this stuff? Do you believe in supplements at that level, or are they all?
No, you have to. The only way that we would never have to have supplemented or even considered it is if we were living a natural life and we were having all of our biological needs met, right? So if we're living a natural life and we have access to all the foods that we were designed to eat, the biological niche out of which we arose, there'd be all the plants and we'd be eating them, all that. We'd be getting the sunshine. All those things would be happening. So we wouldn't have to think about it or even consider it. But because our food supply has been damaged in multiple ways over the last
Due to pesticides, GMO primarily.
right, and also the soil's been leached. We can't. There was a lot of articles in the 1920s.
What's it? Tilling. No.
Tilling, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's really bad stuff. In the 1920s, a lot of articles about the soil was depleted of selenium back in the 20s, right? So you can imagine by now. So that's by doing these monocrops, right, where they just do one crop year after year after year, and they only add in what is it, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus.
So it's not intentional. It's purely
Both.
Capitalism, monetary game, or what do you mean intentional?
Well, both.
Yeah.
Because on top of it all, if you go back to the turn of the 20th century, 19th to the 20th century, the early 1900s, Rockefeller and his group, Rockefeller worked with a guy named Charles Barnett. Charles? I forget his first name. Anyway, Barnett, Edward Barnett. Yeah, Edward Barnett.
And which Rockefeller? Which
we're talking about Junior.
Okay.
Junior. Yeah. Actually, senior. Sorry, senior, and then Junior was just coming on board.
Yeah.
Right. So he worked with Edward Bernays. Now, Edward Bernays and one other guy named, I forget his name. But anyway, there was two guys, main guys, who in those days were masters at propaganda. And what they did was they turned the word propaganda to public relations. So because they knew that propaganda had that name. And the reason they knew that is because a little while later, about a decade later, a guy named Goebbels got really interested in Bernays and started using his techniques in Germany. And, Goebbels, whatever his name was part of the Nazi regime. Yeah. So anyway, they got really good at that. And if we look at cancer, and that's because my interest was cancer, if we look at cancer, I think it was responsible for 0.07 deaths, 0.07%.
At the turn of the century, yeah. And this is when the Rockefellers are kind of coming into hidden power, and this is all kind of connecting back to tilling soil. And
so what they said was, they made it a big deal. They started to propagandize cancer. So you get to now where it's 40%, 30 to 40%. So they took it from 0.07 up to that.
And they had the studies and the data, like this can all still be, it's more of a historical understanding of cancer. Like, when was cancer officially discovered as I know you don't like to use the word a disease in that sense, but when did this really come to the medical books, and when they're saying this is cancer, you have cancer? Is just the turn of the century, or was this being diagnosed for, let's say, the past 500 years?
Yeah, well, actually, Hippocrates saw it.
Okay. Way
back 2,000 years ago. So it's been around. But it was very, very small percentage. And it was usually it was usually afflicted those who were wealthy, because they could afford to eat all these cooked, delicious Epicurean delights, right? But the basic person that lived an agrarian lifestyle wasn't getting it. Those guys weren't getting it. And when they tell you we're living longer, all you have to do is I have a habit. It's not a habit. It's kind of like and not even an obsession, but just something I need to do. Wherever I go, whatever country, whatever state I go to their graveyards. Problem here in a lot of places in Asia is they don't have graveyards because they cremate people. Mm-hmm. But if you go to the graveyards and you go into the country, go to the German countryside, and then go to the German cities and look at the graveyards and look at the how much time is in the dash. You know the dash. The dash is the most important part. Well, you got the time you were born and the time you died, the year you're born, and the dash is your life, right? Mm. So how long is that dash, right? So born 1670, died 1720. Right. So anyway, if you look at how long people lived, you're still going to find people that are living 80 to 120 years everywhere you go, especially in the countryside. But when you understand statistics, and anybody who's gone to school and was worried about a grade point average knows, you got straight A's, you get 1 C, you're screwed. But you can't get it back. You'll never get a 4.0 again.
Yes.
Right. And it'll be really hard to get it up. So your average stays low. So that one low one. So when we look around the turn of the century, when I think it was 1 out of 5 births, there was a mortality.
I see where you're going.
You got that. So you got young mothers dying. You got fetuses dying. or a baby's dying, newborns dying, or 2-year-olds or 1-year-old. So that was it. So if you made it to 5 in those days, because of the infections. Now, we didn't see those kinds of infections in the rural. We only saw it in the urban areas where there was, it was really poor hygiene. So, but anyway, so the average has come down, but the length of time that people live is still about the same, which is very interesting. The difference is that the guys that were living 80, 90, 100 years in those days were still robust. They were running around outside, chopping down trees or doing whatever they were doing. Our 80 or 90-year-olds are wearing diapers, right? So we're keeping them alive with drugs and all these sort of things, but they don't have the same quality. But in terms of lifespan, they're saying we've never had it so good, we've never lived so long, and all that stuff. I just want you to know that's not a true statement. And to prove it, don't believe me, to prove it, start visiting graveyards and just start looking, and you'll see that the average.
Does that whole topic tie into the Rockefellers coming in and with the propaganda from, let's say, big pharma and saying, and essentially that is the narrative today. It's we're living longer because of medicine. That's the narrative.
Yep.
That's the propaganda.
Yep.
Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Today?
Absolutely.
So how did that propaganda begin? Because I'm assuming that's where you're going with that,
Exactly.
with the Rockefellers coming in.
That is where it began. It began with them, and
if you want the pill, some people put it behind their back. If not, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And some water. Don't worry. Always jump in anytime.
So, no, that was the idea, to push, because you got to understand what Rockefeller understood is that pharmaceutical products are mostly from our petroleum. The capsules are petroleum. A lot of the drugs are made with petroleum products. So this was a good way for him to use, because he was an oil man.
Yeah.
So he had all this oil, and so he wanted to. So he took over the industry. The industry. For example, when they found a carburetor that was able to get, the efficiency was up to like 80, 90%, and they were getting 70 miles a gallon, 100 miles a gallon. They bought that patent and put it away. And so now you're getting 15 miles to the gallon, 20 miles to the gallon. Same thing with rubber. They found rubber that just won't wear out. They bought up that patent, got rid of it, and we're still replacing our tires.
So they were stripping all industries to make sure that they can still maximize their profits.
To keep things going. So anyway, there on top of it all, there's always been this extreme radical view, or whatever it is, of eugenics, and that is of breeding human beings so that you have a master race and then you have a lower race, and they've wanted to do that, and that came to an extreme during the Nazi thing. Where
what is the motivation? Why are they doing that? Or what was the reasoning behind that?
Well, the reasoning is to have a clear distinction between them, because they're the upper class. They're blood. They really consider themselves. Actually, I don't know if most people may not know this, but there are a certain number of families.
Yeah.
That have been around since Babylon and Egypt, and they came through. A lot of them have Italians, like Orsini.
Yeah, you're saying about the Orsini.
They have these families and these bloodlines, and they do consider themselves superior, and they want to, and that's why they all intermarry. A Morgan will marry a Rockefeller, and all that. And if, for example, if we look at Bill Gates, on his maternal side, it goes up to Rockefellers.
Really,
on his maternal side, he's a Rockefeller.
And this is, again, people should understand, like, there are conspiracy theories out there, but certain information, this is traceable, trackable. You can go look into this yourself as well.
Yeah, I wrote
do you want to bring the mic a bit?
I wrote
yeah, there you go.
It was originally going to be just a paper, but it turned out to be like 60, 70 pages. So I might make it a small book, but it's called A True Second Opinion. Why do you need to get a true second opinion? And you say, well, I got a second opinion. I went to all these 5 different great, well-known cancer centers, but they all said the same thing.
Well, they're all being paid by the same.
Well, they all work by the same algorithms. They call it conventional medicine, and the word convention is agreement, right? By convention, we do this. By agreement, we do this. So conventional medicine is not by science. It's not science-based. It's by convention. So the American Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology, the American Society of Neurology, the American Society of Internal Medicine, all of these.
This is a standard of care.
Standard of care.
Yeah.
Which they have, right? And so, and in those, and for cancer, it's the American Society of Clinical Oncology, ASCO, and they have their algorithms. So if you have this thing, you have two choices. You can do this or this. But if you go this way and this happens, you do this. So
Yeah.
that's why when you go in and you've got a diagnosis, which is a name, they know where to stick that name into their algorithm, and they'll tell you. So it doesn't matter which doctor you go to. He's just repeating algorithms.
So you technically, you don't even need a doctor.
That's it. There it is. They're going to eliminate the doctors. What they'll have is a highly trained nurse practitioner who can do the physical exam,
Mm.
and then do the blood tests, feed it into AI, and AI will spit out the protocols perfectly every time. And you no longer need the doctor. And see, doctors have acquiesced and given in and agreed to become the salesman for the pharmaceutical industries. Is what they are. They're basically at the sales.
Do you think they're doing that by fear of going against the grain and spending 10 years in education just to discover that if you don't follow
and vanity, ego massage.
Mm.
They get, you're in this exclusive club. After all, you're a doctor. I mean, you made it. You're a doctor, and doctors, so you're in an exclusive club, and you don't want to lose that because that's a pretty good place to be in society. Well, he's a doctor or he's a lawyer, so you're going to stay with it. So, for example, if I prescribe something like I prescribe
vitamin C,
artesunate, artemisinin, something like that, it's not the standard of care. Therefore, and the legal ramifications is if someone were to have a problem with that, I could be sued because I wasn't practicing in the standard of care. Now, I've never been sued, ever. And that's because all my patients understand that I discuss everything in detail, I educate them, and I'm doing the best.
They know the risks as well of getting involved.
And they know I'm doing the best.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm trying to fool them. I don't sell them anything.
Yeah.
But
is there education or schooling? Let's call it I don't want to say alternative medicine, but maybe alternative education instead of going down the same going through the John Hopkins route. Is there another alternative for a young upcoming doctor that does not want to go through this standard of care and typical educational path? Is there anything available in the U.S.?
Yeah, there are. There's the American Holistic Medical Association. There's A4M, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. There's several of those where you can take courses in. There's American something of functional medicine. Functional medicine is really a term that's come about because which is what you would always expect that doctors would do, would be functional medicine. In other words, they're seeing what works, let's look at your biochemistry and make a decision based on your biochemistry instead of making a decision based on an algorithm, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, functional medicine. So a lot of doctors are getting trained in that now. And you can get certification in that and all that. The problem is that you would have to have known this actually before you went to medical school and have chosen to be a naturopath. If you had chosen to be a naturopath, you wouldn't have gone down that allopathic path. Because when you go down the allopathic path, and that's intensive training, it gets ingrained so deeply. Like my hardest, most difficult thing when I'm training doctors is to get them to not think allopathically. And I can't, even though I can teach them all the protocols and stuff like that. But allopathy still and this is the thing about even the naturopaths. Allopathy, the foundation of allopathy is the germ theory, which became the disease theory, mm-hmm. which became the basis of the medical model. So the medical model says you've got a disease, which is this entity that exists somewhere in the universe or many places in the universe. And you catch it, whether it's high blood pressure, diabetes, doesn't matter, heart disease, it's a disease. And you got to get rid of it. That paradigm is the medical model. So even the naturopath who's giving you, instead of 10 prescriptions, he's giving you 10 herbs, still is operating under the fact that you have a disease and I'm going to fix it with Boswellia. I'm going to fix it with Maitake. I'm going to fix it. So the only school that evolved.
So we need to change the language of how we're
the language. So it's called the School of Hygiene, Natural Hygiene. In the 1840s, 1850s, we had a guy named Troll, and then you had a lot of very well-known people.
Do you take that into consideration that you need to fix the language because even the subconscious power of the mind is also curing yourself?
Absolutely, that's exactly it. So
Meaning, even if you're a naturopath, don't be telling patients they have a disease.
exactly.
Let's change that.
Right, right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. And if we look at traditional healing, indigenous traditional healing um, disciplines such as traditional Chinese, Ayurvedic, even if you go to Africa, Africa had many indigenous healing disciplines that were amazing. Europe, everywhere has got them. Australia. So, but these people, these disciplines are always focused on restoring balance. They see, so the Chinese will see basically a yin yang, and this is hot and fire, and they want to bring the elements back into balance. So will Ayurvedic. They want to bring the doshas back into balance. So those are the true healing disciplines. So there's a healing paradigm that means that health or optimal functioning comes about is the consequence of living a life that supplies all your biological, psychological, and spiritual needs. Okay, that the result is health. If there's any imbalance in that, then you are out of balance, right? And you need to restore that balance. And when you're out of balance, the body will engage in an adaptive response to maintain functional integrity. It has to maintain the function. Okay, so that adaptive response is what the allopaths are calling a disease.
So is that like I don't know if we were discussing this, but I think it goes on this point. Is that why we have a fever?
Yeah.
The fever is essentially the body repairing itself.
Right, right, right. The fever is a fever uh, is the way the body recruits the immune system, wakes it up.
So but there is a certain point where the fever, well, like what would you do for yourself if you have a 38.5 temperature and it's just, it's lasting 8 hours and you can't kick it after, 2 days? Like, is there a certain point where it hits 40 where what do you do when you've gone past like a certain threshold, like where it becomes critical?
Well, it's really not uncommon for it to become critical. We can see it with babies. It can go so high they can have seizures. That's a different story.
Okay.
And with babies, you wouldn't use a drug to lower it. What you would do is you would get wet towels, not cold, because they're already hot, but just room temperature wet, and you'd put it in their groin, across their abdomen, under their armpits, and on their neck. And if you do that, you'll cool them off from the core, and you'll cool them down. But you don't want to destroy the fever, because the fever is the way that the T cells are activated, natural killer cells are activated, macrophages are activated, dendritic cells are activated, polymorphonuclear are activated. You want all those to be activated, because otherwise they're on a surveillance mode. And when they're in surveillance mode, because if we were walking around activated all the time, we'd all have what they call autoimmune conditions. We'd be like that, right? We'd have a cytokine storm all the time. You can't do that. So our immune system is normally in surveillance mode, and then something happens and we need to recruit the big guys. You get a fever. Why does that work? Because the fever stimulates certain cells to produce certain chemicals, cytokines called interleukins and things like that, which just activate it. You need that to happen. If that doesn't happen, you can't heal.
But there's no point of having a fever for like 12 straight hours and your temperature is 38. Do you need
as long as you have here's what we got to do. We have to regain a respect for nature. We've lost it. We've lost it. We think that nature doesn't know what it's doing, that nature is somehow ignorant. Okay, if I've got a fever for 10 days, it's because I need a fever for 10 days. Let me give you an example of that. Dr. William Coley, 1905, 1907, worked at Memorial Hospital in New York City. Memorial Hospital later became Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital, which is a big cancer center. He came around, he was a surgeon, and the way they treated sarcomas in those days, which is a kind of cancer, was they did amputations. Sarcomas are muscles, cancers of the muscle and the bone. They would just cut it off. So he would go around and he'd find that certain people that he was scheduled to see left the hospital. They were discharged in good health. And he said, what's going on here? So he went and he found them. In New York City was still small, so he went and found them. He said, what happened? And he said, well, I got erysipelas. Erysipelas was a rash, a red rash that gave him a fever. And it was later found to be associated with Streptococcus pyogenes, which is a strep, kind of a strep. So anyway, he goes, wow. So he had a fever for 10 days and the cancer was gone. So he, out of the box thinking, got that. He fooled around for a few years. He would give people strep, and then if they didn't die from the strep, then they would be okay. The cancer would go away. However, he then realized, well, let me just heat these bacteria up, inactivate them so they can't colonize, but they'll still produce a fever. So he did that. And he wound up with two bacteria, Serratia marcescens and Streptococcus pyogenes. Inactivated them, gave them in a syringe over and over and over for 10, 14, 21 days, 30 days, whatever it took. And they uncomfortable, shaking, chills, uncomfortable, sweating, cancer gone. And this is very interesting. It is the only therapy that has 40 and 50-year long-term follow-ups of no recurrence. Okay.
This type of treatment.
Yeah. Now, when he died in the 40s, and by the way, it became known as cholestoxin.
Does this still exist? Could you administer this, or just
it's illegal now?
Okay.
Yeah. The Fraud and Death Association, the FDA, they made it illegal in the 40s after he died.
Yeah.
So what we were doing, even back 10 years ago in Arizona, was we could still order it. There was a lab in Canada that would make it, but we'd have to have the patient go to Venezuela to get it administered for the first few times. Then they could come into the U.S. under the compassionate use law. And under compassionate use, if someone's been using a treatment that's working for them and they come in, you can continue it as long as it's not completely contraband. And this was. So we would get it around it by doing that way. In Japan, they found another bacteria called PC banil, and they were using that, and Dr. Kobayashi did that very effectively until that got shut down. So that's why we started to use external hyperthermia. So you get into a machine, and it heats up your body, and we get your core up to 40 degrees. And we hold it there for 4 hours. It takes 2 hours to get okay. And then we do that once a week. But again, that's not as effective as an endogenous from within fever. That's an externally induced. It's not the same, but it's still extremely effective. And Dr. Kobayashi in Japan is the only guy. Now this guy is, he was a PhD first, then became an MD, right? And then an oncologist. So every treatment he does first had to be proven in a lab and doing biomarkers and things like that. This guy wears a white coat down to his ankles. He's totally scientific. He keeps meticulous notes. And over 40 years of practice, he's the only person I've known who has a 70% long-term remission with cancer. Okay. And what he does is that hyperthermia once a week. And then the rest of the week is balancing the autonomic nervous system and diet. And one of his big things with diet, just for everybody to keep in mind, is if you're going to avoid cigarettes for your health, then avoid cold beverages. And especially ice. If you got ice, drink whatever it is. Because 60 to 70% of our immune system is in our gut, as you know. In the form of lymph nodes and Peyer's patches and spleen and all that sort of thing, right? And the lymph nodes are the headquarters. That's where the immune system makes its decisions on what to do, right? And which cytokines to produce and which cells to.
Is that why the Chinese they stand by warm water?
Yeah.
Like the Chinese, they truly like. I lived in China, and if you were sick, literally their medicine was, or not even if you were sick. They don't even drink cold water. Yeah. There's not a single Chinese person that, like, if you brought them ice, they'd be like, no, you'll get sick. Don't drink this. Exactly.
Yeah. So
I think, well, as a foreigner, we would just laugh at them.
Right.
Well, maybe it's making sense now.
Right. So what happens is this. Just extrapolate now. To enhance your immune system, you get a fever. So the opposite would be true. If the colder it is, the less active your immune system is. So if you're drinking cold beverages all day, you're inactivating your immune system. You're keeping it low. And just think of it this way. There are 37 billion chemical reactions going on in the body every second. Now, Each one of those is mediated by an enzyme. Enzymes are proteins, and proteins have a primary structure, which is their amino acid sequence. They have a secondary structure, which is how they fold, depending on hydrogen bonding and stuff like that. Then they have a tertiary structure, which is their shape, their three-dimensional shape. And it's that shape that defines its function, just like the shape of my hand defines my function. 4 fingers and 1 thumb, it's that shape. But if my thumb were here and I still had 4 fingers and 1 thumb, I wouldn't have the function. So shape is shape, function, form, function, anatomy, physiology, same sort of thing. So when you're talking about a protein, and especially an enzyme, it's got to have it has a particular shape. So when we look at, let's say, growth hormone was what, 193 or something amino acids, but because of its shape, it's only this little part down here that's doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
But if it loses that shape, it can't perform that function. So what determines the shape of an enzyme? Because we already know the primary, secondary structure. The shape is determined by 2 things, the pH and the temperature. Okay, so all different parts of our body have different pHs. We may not know that because we all think we need to be alkaline everywhere. If you're alkaline everywhere, you're dead. Okay, your stomach has to be a pH of 1.5 to 2.
And that depending on your food, the water, your diet, essentially.
Well, no, your colon has to be acidic.
Yeah.
6.8, 6.9. You can't have a 7.4. You need to have a pH of 7.4 in your blood and in your interstitial fluid around your cells, but not in different organs, okay?
So what is the best way to balance that pH through the body in terms of diet?
Well, we'll do that when we get back to the gorillas.
Okay.
But so anyway, so the enzyme, which is a protein, has a particular shape. Now, all enzymes have an optimal pH and an optimal temperature, okay? So now the optimal temperature for all the enzymes in our body is 37 degrees centigrade or 98.6 Fahrenheit, except for our immune cells. Their optimal temperature is 39.5 to 40.5 or 103 to 104.5 Fahrenheit. That's the optimal temperature at which they function at their best. Okay, so by going up to that temperature, you're going to get optimum functioning. Okay, you don't want to be there all the time, but you just want to be there. So a cold-blooded animal, a lizard, a snake, if they get ill, they instinctively crawl onto a hot rock and bake in the sun to bring their body temperature up so that they can take care of this problem. So we don't have to do that. So warm-blooded animals can have an endogenous fever. So that's what we do. That's the importance of fever. And enzymes and all that sort of thing. And then that goes to cooking too. I mean, if you're talking about enzymes, but
yeah, so it's here before I jump to that. So when I had, let's call it the long current situation. I got it like early January, and honestly, I just kicked it like a week ago. Officially, like I had 3 weeks of a cough, and then I did a test. And then I figured out the line was a bit faded, so it was kind of the end of that. Then I was good for 2 weeks, and then boom, one day just came out of nowhere, fever of 38.5 for 3 or 4 days. Then again, good 2 weeks, and then boom again, cough comes back, fever, then good again, and then a week later it would come back, and then kind of I would just feel the last 3, let's call it the last month, every day, like very fatigued, meaning like if I went out to dinner, halfway through the dinner, I'd have this like, chatter in my head, like go home, lay down, go home, like just fatigued. Like I couldn't even get through a dinner. And I went to the hospital, which I would never do. Cause I think it's just, what am I paying for? I kind of understand what's going on. And they basically, even the doctors there said they didn't give me medicine. They were just like, nope, you have long current situation. Just wait another month. And now it's been finally like the past 2 weeks. I felt better. Like I can actually go out and like, I wouldn't even be able to go for a walk on the beach like a month ago. The point of my question is, so when I was having those high temperatures, my sister's a nurse and they were unbearable, like 39 almost. And like to the point where like you almost start hallucinating a little bit. And in and out of sleep, but I'm not dying, but it scares you enough. And I asked my sister, and she said what they give to children and everyone at the hospital is like X amount of Tylenol and X amount of Advil, because one is a paracetamol and one's a aceto, and you can pronounce that much better than me. And she said it was like 800 grams of one and 400 grams of the other. Now, it took the fever away, but I'm sure you can talk on this much better. I'm assuming what I'm actually doing is I'm suppressing it, and it should be allowing that natural fever to fight. Like you said, the immune system, it's heated up. That part of the system is heating up because it needs to be at that temperature to protect yourself. But I almost felt like I was going to die at some point. Now, do I just ride that out, that fever, and just fight through the pain? Or should I be taking these? And obviously you're going to say no, but could you explain why no?
Yeah.
It's a little, maybe even further of, sorry, the question is more, when the doctor prescribes that you're taking Tylenol and Advil, I think it's 800 and 400. What is the issue with that diagnose or that dosage or that diagnosis? So what is that actually doing to the body that's not good for us?
Well, it's blocking. It blocks
Receptors,
enzymes, and basically there are these pathways, oxygenases and prostaglandins and things like that are part of the inflammatory process, and they're activated. So these pills block that. And so they block that whole inflammatory process. Now, inflammation is the way the body heals. You bang your finger with a hammer, and it's going to get red hot, swollen, and painful. Four cardinal signs of inflammation. It'll get that way, and the reason it's hot and all that, because there's increased blood flow. The blood vessels are leaky, so you can get more blood and more white blood cells and all that stuff. And the reason it's hot is because blood carries heat. And it's swollen because there's increased so all those symptoms come from, and it's red because there's more blood. So all of those systems, what do they call it in Latin? Calor, dolor. Should know those. Tumor. Tumor just means big.
Yep.
Not tumor. And then what's the other one? Calor, tumor, whatever it is. So anyway, those four signs, and then it heals. That's how it heals, because that is necessary. You don't get that, you won't heal. Where we have a problem with inflammation is when you keep banging your finger and you keep banging it. And now it becomes chronic inflammation, which is a whole different species. Now, like I keep banging my finger, what's going to happen? I'm going to develop a callus. It's going to proliferate. The tissues are going to grow. And so now my body, instead of trying to undo that, it kind of supports tissue proliferation. That's why chronic inflammation underlies heart problems, underlies cancer, underlies all those things. It's a whole different animal. But acute inflammation, which is what's happening when you've got some sort of organism that's causing a problem.
It is a bacteria at this point, or it could have
virus.
So it's the virus that's causing this fever, essentially. Then the body, but I think I was listening to you on that, and I think this all ties together. Is you can't really fight a virus. You need your immune system to boost it.
Well, no, viruses aren't alive.
Right, it's attached to a host.
Right, it's not alive. A virus is not alive.
Yeah.
It's basically a genetic sequence, either RNA or DNA. It's in a protein coat, and then it's got these like almost like, if you look at them in an electron microscope, it looks like landing module. It looks like a spaceship. It lands like that, and then with an enzyme, it drills a hole in that cell, inserts its DNA, and then that just falls over because it's not there. Because a virus doesn't eat, drink, breathe, have waste, and it cannot procreate. It's just genetic information with some enzymes. So, but it does, when it inserts itself into your cell's DNA, whether it's RNA or DNA, it inserts it into your DNA. Now your cell's machinery, reproductive machinery, produce it. So that's why that old joke, what's the difference between true love and herpes? Herpes is forever, right? And the reason that was a joke was because you can't get rid of a virus, because a virus is now you. It has now become part of your DNA.
So what are you're just suppressing it by keeping
well, you develop an immune response so that every time one of your cells tries to produce it, it's immediately eliminated. Now that is the disease theory, okay? The other theory says there's no such thing as viruses. They are exosomes. They are part of the way our body communicates. That's a whole discussion which we could
Do you,
another
do you
time.
believe in that theory as well?
Exosome, yeah. I mean, yeah, exosomes. I think they are exosomes.
Meaning it's already living in us anyways, and then it's activated.
No. An exosome is when if let's say a group of cells are damaged by some sort of poison you took. What they do is they develop a response. Okay. While they develop that response, if that response is working to help them, they package that information in a little lipid envelope and they push it out into the environment so that the other cells, that's the way it communicates to other cells. They're called exosomes. And an exosome is about 100 nanometers and it contains RNA. A virus is about 100 nanometers and contains RNA or DNA. Okay. So they are indistinguishable. And we know about exosomes in cancer. We know about exosomes in all that. Exosomes is not a theory. They exist. And no one anywhere, the head of the biology department, the head of the virology department at the greatest schools, academic centers in the world, cannot tell you that there's a difference between an exosome and a virus. So therefore, is there a difference? I mean, so anyway.
So
the point is, what we may be looking at are our bodies. So there's a theory out there. There's a group of people who think that we're being exposed to 5G and other kinds of toxins.
That's enhancing that.
No, that's stimulating exosome production.
Stimulating is the word. Yeah.
So the exosomes are being produced to protect, it's a communication form. So they're going to protect the other cells. And so, you've got this virus. It's not a virus. And so, and then, and if we go back, you can't push that theory aside. You can't prove it wrong. You can't prove it wrong. And if you look at every epidemic we've had, that's called a big viral epidemic, it's always been associated with change in our electromagnetic.
Change in technology. I think we talked about that as well before. Maybe I know I might have mentioned
1918 with the flu.
With the telephone.
Spanish flu.
That's
the radar.
A lot of this technology being introduced in 1918.
Right.
Yes, the telephone was invented late at the turn of the century, but mass adoption wasn't until 1915. Spanish flu, you do the math.
Yeah, the whole thing, right? And then and in those days we didn't have airplanes, so how the heck could somebody get it in Africa and in
but now the whole world had it at the Spanish flu because they always tried to
pandemic.
But that pandemic, I feel the propaganda behind that, they're really making it American centric, saying it's pretty much it only happened to the US. But it happened.
Yeah,
I know. I thought it was just
worldwide.
USA.
And they even took samples.
Yeah.
They tried to do, it's called Koch's postulates. Koch's postulates, he was right around the time of Louis Pasteur.
What's that? Oh, 1 hour. Okay, we're good.
That's the 1 hour. Yeah.
So Louis Pasteur, right around the same, the Koch said, okay, if we're going to definitely say that this microorganism causes your disease, then what we've got to be able to do is isolate that microorganism from someone who is sick, put it into a dish, grow it out so that we have other ones.
Here, let's bring the mic down a bit, just so when we clip this later, you don't have a mic covering your whole face.
So,
Eloquent. Yeah.
To grow out the microorganism, and then give that to a healthy person, and they should get the same sickness, and then we should be able to take that out and do another person. So that meets Koch's postulates. Okay. Now, nothing has ever met it. Nothing has ever met it. You can't do that with anything. You can't do that with staph, with strep, or any of that. Nothing. You guys, that's pretty powerful. You got to think about that a while and maybe come back to it. But so anyway, during the Spanish flu, they actually took snot out of one person and put it into a healthy person. They did this to thousands, literally, I forget how many people, 20,000, 30,000 people. They took their blood, they took the urine, they took saliva, they took the cough, the phlegm. They took all these things. They could not reproduce it. They could not meet Koch's postulates. And those Koch's postulates, now the scientific literature is saying, well, Koch's postulates can't possibly work with viruses, right? And so, but they don't really work with, like I could take strep and give it to you. Okay, somebody walks in right now, and there's 5 of us, and they sneeze all over us. 2 of us get sick, and 3 don't.
Why? It's because you're saying it's stimulating. It's already within
Well,
us.
right. Why would 2 get sick and when 3 wouldn't? It's because of our immunity,
Mm.
right? It's because of our immunity. And this person was already sick. This person was already sick. Because there, or in other words, if I have like right now, if I were to swab your throat and my throat, we probably a good chance of having strep. Staph, they're natural. They live in us. They live in us, but they're under control because we have a good flora. When they get out of control is when our immunity breaks down, right? And a big part of our immunity is our gut.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so there's a controversy whether or not viruses actually exist, and so the question is, what are we all reacting to? So no, there's so much unknown, and I don't really have the answers. Nobody does. Some people think they do.
And that's also probably the research is suppressed.
Right.
They don't want you to find out, and maybe they don't know, but don't open that Pandora's box either.
Well, they're doing something. They're doing something, or actually doing many things. I forget the guy's name, but you can find him on BitChute. There's Thomas Cowan. You know him, Dr. Cowan?
I think I've seen a
and there's
post.
another guy named Kaufman, Dr. Kaufman. Go on BitChute, and just put in Dr. Kaufman and look at some of his videos, and look at Dr. Cowan, Cowan, and look at his videos. And they go into detail about this. I mean, it's scientific. I mean, Kaufman is a scholar.
Mm-hmm.
He's a scholar. He's a forensic psychiatrist, PhD. He's pretty smart. MD. Anyway, these guys are smart. So that if you want to get that argument
to fully understand
the exosome,
even the exosome and the research behind that.
Yeah.
One we didn't touch upon this last time, and I think there's a way we can kind of go around it in a bit of a circle. I've listened to you hear both sides of the story with the current situation, and let's call it the injection. But I more like from like a pure objective level speaking about that, and what is it actually doing specifically. A lot of people that are pro will come across and say, well, it's not even a virus, it's actually genetically modifying, blah blah blah. I'd rather, if are you able to speak on that from a pure like objective standpoint?
Yeah, well, what the companies Pfizer and Moderna
and we're okay to talk about that at this.
I think so, because but this is what they state.
Okay,
what they state is that RNA technology is designed to go into the host, to have the RNA stimulate their.
Now the virus we got, it's again, whether it's exosome or it's a virus, this has infiltrated us, and it's this is RNA that's come in and modified our genome. Just so that part's clear. I'm trying to understand that. And then, okay, let's continue back to you where you're saying what is the injection doing?
So the injection is they again, they have RNA, or I think what is it? Astra is the only DNA one. The rest are RNA. But anyway, what they do is it tells your cell to produce the spike protein. Okay, because the spike protein has been discovered as being the infectious particle, the particle that can grab onto a cell and then to produce the spike protein. So the spike protein, so that's what this. So now your cells are producing spike protein. The idea, this is what Moderna and Pfizer say, the idea is now your body will develop a response, an immune response to that spike protein. So when you encounter the real virus and it comes in with its spike protein, you'll already have the antibodies to eliminate it. So that's the theory, and that's how they got approved, and that's what they're.
So it's trying to they're saying we're going to give you the injection, you're going to get the spike protein, the right. issue. I'm sorry how I'm wording this. I'm trying to go in circles as well.
Right.
And we're going to inject you. So if you do encounter it, it will be less of a blow. That's their story.
Well, you already have. Well, that's the idea of all vaccinations.
Okay.
All vaccinations are that they're going to introduce into you a non-lethal, non-dangerous component.
Okay.
So when they, like, for example, if we go back to measles and polio and all those other ones, that's what they did. They're called attenuated viruses. Sometimes they're live viruses, which means they haven't attenuated them. like the live polio and stuff like that. But so the idea is that they give you this, you develop immune response. Then if you run into it, you're going to get you're going to already have the immunity. So excuse me. So the problem has been that the immunity has not been that there's almost no difference between those who get the injection and who don't get the injection in terms of their
building up the immune system
or getting the infection. They're still susceptible to getting the virus. Mm-hmm. So in other words, it's not giving the immunity. And then we won't go into the other side of things.
Okay, so it's pretty much useless.
Yeah.
The one,
yeah, well, I know. The thing. Well, that's I mean, if you just think about it, whether you've had it or not, you still have to wear masks. You still have to social distance. You have to wash your hands.
Yeah, and we're all aware of that as the beginning of this conversation. I mean, keeping people indoors, using more disinfectant, you're actually just jeopardizing the immune system because, like the rich in the beginning of this story, let's say, you're just becoming too sterile. It's not natural. Are we able to talk on, and you can say no, this is just, again, we don't want to, YouTube, Thailand, we love you. We don't want to cross any lines either. And that's why we can't go in too deep on the wrong subjects. These injections that we are getting, and now it's being released. Okay, let me rephrase that. I know of someone that went to the US that lives in Thailand, and he will be on the podcast and he will talk about that, but I won't use his name now. He's very healthy, if not maybe the healthiest person probably on the island, let's say. He went to US, he got the injection, and then he had problems with his lymph nodes, and that turned to cancer. I'm going to assume, and if you can talk about this more on the scientific level, these super healthy people that are getting the injection and getting sick, is it that their receptors or their body is just so healthy and open that it is more susceptible to these side effects with the injection? And basically what happened to him was his lymph nodes all swelled up, especially here, and he did not know for months and just tried to treat it naturally or from some medicine from the doctor. And then finally there was a certain point where he's like, hey, this is not normal. And then he got diagnosed, let's say, with cancer, and he did chemo, and I believe he did it on the island here. And he's finally got through it and he's getting better now. But again, this guy he would be the poster child for the most healthiest person. From far as I know, not a heavy drinker, not a smoker, not doing drugs, eating super clean, exercising every day. And this happened to him. Are you able to speak on to why that could have happened?
Should not.
Okay. Oh, well, that he will come on the podcast and he'll tell us his story. But obviously I had to ask that because we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, and I think you guys know why.
Yeah.
Are we able to speak on, and that's fine because we can ask this and then you're going to be the one that goes, no, let's not do that. That's fine. Yeah. And we never said anything, so you can't do anything. Next. You're talking about Astra, and how Thailand, this was their injection that they administered throughout Thailand. Is that correct?
Well, no, the first one was Sinovac.
And then, but you're saying,
is just the spike protein.
Are we allowed to discuss? I have a conspiracy theory on that. Why? And again, just stop me right away if you're like, whoa, don't go down that road. Why was Thailand one of the last countries to introduce the injection to the country on a mass scale? I truly believe that Thailand is always going to be Thailand, and they actually know better than I would say most of the world. And I believe they were actually looking out for their people, is why they did not go down that route from the beginning. They really waited it out a bit. Is that something we can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but I think we're getting into an area where we should tread lightly. But lightly. Yeah, I think, it's hard to say why they did it, but yeah, they gave the Sinovac, which is really not it's not an RNA, it's not a gene altering,
and it's not as harsh, and that's why it's not recognized around most places when you're in travel,
because it only introduces the spike protein.
Now, okay, that then ties into China, meaning the whole reason there's reasons why I haven't done it, but I have business in China and I'm from Canada, but to get into China, I need the Sinovac. To get into Canada, I need who knows, whatever, Pfizer. So I just said, well, I'm not doing any of them. I'm not getting a cocktail. But the Chinese are also sitting behind the Sinovac. Could that also be the fact that it's not as potent, and they know that as well?
I think so. I mean, but now I've heard they have a new one.
I don't know.
They have a new one, but yeah, Casino. I think China. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's so many unknowns. We can only speculate about why they did that, and I'm just glad. I'm glad that Thailand has taken the route it has. I think it's been probably the best way they could have maneuvered, considering the current situation worldwide, and there's pressures put on governments and all sorts of stuff. So I think they've done really a good job.
Do you think a part of these countries as well, like let's say Thailand, they need to tread lightly because sanctions could be imposed?
Well, yeah.
Okay, let's not go down
More
there.
than
Are we allowed to talk? And maybe this is the conspiracy. I think we did well there. We didn't cross any lines.
Right.
I don't. Did we?
Are you gonna go back to the gorilla at some point?
Yeah, we're coming back. That's how we close the show.
Yeah.
It's keeping people holding on. Increase that time watched on this podcast. Get me up in the algorithm. Wait for the gorilla story. It's coming.
Yeah.
Are we able to discuss the conspiracy theory side and tying it together with Rockefeller, Bill Gates, and just general big pharma and their intentions?
Well, yeah. I mean, because I don't think it's even conspiracy anymore. It's It's not a theory anymore. There's conspiracy facts.
Meaning like Bill Gates, and this is his father was involved in gene therapy, and let's be honest, did Bill Gates really create Microsoft in his garage? Like, get out of here. This is the most crock shit story I've ever heard in my life. But how, and I think people have heard the very high levels part of that story, meaning like, oh, Bill Gates is pro-vax because of this and from his father. And are you able to get more detailed of that story and connecting it to the Rockefellers, them, and connecting that to big pharma?
Well, it was part Planned Parenthood. It was all part of the eugenics movement that we talked about of breeding out a super race and having so if we could have some really basic distinctions between the races, almost if we could come up with two species, they would be the happiest, right? The workers and then the elite, kind of like the Hunger Games kind of thing, but even more. But anyway, when we go back to Edward Bernays and all them, we see what happened was that they sold cancer, they consolidated medicine. They hired this guy named Abraham Flexner. He wrote the Flexner Report. It was published in 1910, and that changed medical education forever. The allopaths took over, and all the other schools, disciplines were considered second and third tier, right? And so the allopaths took over, and they became the only scientific, et cetera, and they got their place from the Flexner Report. And there's other things. I go into a little more detail in this book this thing I wrote called The True Second Opinion, and I'll make it available on my website soon. But a True Second Opinion, I go through the history of all of this, and then what is and all that. And so, but their goal was, and it's true. They got together in 1910, 11. On Jekyll Island, right? And they put together something, called the Federal Reserve Act, right? And then they got that passed. They brought Woodrow Wilson in.
He was the president at that time.
Yeah, they brought him. He was running for a second term, and the way they were able to get him is they said he kept Americans out of the war. So they used that, because there had been another war going on in Europe, because World War I had started. And so they brought Teddy Roosevelt out of retirement, ran him as a third party. They split the votes. Wilson won. Wilson signed it. When Wilson retired, he said, you got to look up the quote. Look it up.
Yeah.
He said, I feel like I betrayed. It was the worst thing I've ever done. I betrayed my country. I betrayed. And then it was Rose, and I think it was FDR and some other people said there was a group who we dare not talk about above a
Yeah,
hush.
I've heard that.
Yeah, because they're so powerful.
That's on video too. I've seen that.
So these groups exist. They've been around for a long time. But the idea was to control medical education, because if you control medical education, you control the next generation of doctors. If you control the medical profession, you can now have, because medical, as we've learned in the last couple of years, trumps all other. It trumps, right? If it's a medical reason, you can be forced. In other words, all your rights can be taken. In other words, medical trumps everything for the public good, for public.
For example, the injection and how I forget the bill that they passed, because it is not it is not FDA approved.
Right.
But there is a
Emergency
Act. Right. And is that kind of
emergency use? Yeah.
Yes.
They can't quite get the approval, and I'm not sure why, because they own the FDA, so I'm not sure why they can't. But they're just playing the game.
Yeah. Well, no, because then if you get it FDA approved that young, you've kind of opened up a precedent for other people to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe other competitors of big pharma and big whatever. I don't know if that's a thing, but you don't want to FDA approve, I would guess, an injection that early anyways. It's just you're opening up too many doors, right?
Yeah. So it's but anyway, there's no doubt that this has been going on. If you go back to 1920.
When does Bill Gates' father come into the picture on this genetic modification side? How is he connected to the whole story?
Well, his father was just part of what was that group? Was it Planned Parenthood?
I think so, yeah.
Right. So Planned Parenthood was part of the depopulation program and all that sort of thing. But I think, but even more than that, he's even on his mother's side. The fact that she goes back to the Rockefellers, I think her great-grandfather and Nelson Rockefeller great-grandfather were the same. So that's how they tie in. So it is material. There's all these bloodlines and family lines. In fact, I forget how many presidents. Have you ever looked that up?
Yeah.
How many presidents are cousins?
Yeah.
Distant cousins, like 43 out of 46 or something. Yeah. Trump's probably an odd one there.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it is true, because they are tracking that down. Like, they're able to track down that family tree. It's not just pulling names out of a hat. What do you see, without scaring all of our listeners? Well, what's going to happen in the next few years?
Well, what I see happening right now, and it should be clear to everybody, is that the Ukraine has been, first of all, the Ukraine is part of Russia. It's always been part of Russia. It's not a sovereign state. It doesn't exist as a sovereign state. So it's really hard for Russia to invade Russia. So
is this the change? Is this conversation the CNN change of narrative, diluting the current situation talk? And then do you see it?
Phase 2, we're in phase 2 now. So phase 2 is going to be the war. So there's going to be a war in Ukraine.
Do you think so? Or do you think they just kind of bend over?
No, because the biolabs that are in Ukraine, the biolabs are all American funded.
And that's well documented.
That's well documented. I mean, it's on, it's on Fox News. It's well documented. But so they're setting the stage to say both sides will blame the other side for releasing a bioweapon.
I see your point there, and that conversation has started. Like, for example, the bombing of they're saying Russia bombed a school, and then and the Ukraine will say to the news, yeah, Russia bombed the school, and then Russia says, no, you staged that.
Yeah.
So.
Or you did, or the Americans did it, so anyway.
Would it be biochemical before, like, a virus that they could release? Like, you released mustard gas. No, we didn't. That was you. And now it becomes like he said, she said type of.
And so there's all these really high level biolabs. So they have biological weapons, and they're going to say, so both sides can blame the other now. But you have to realize something. At the top, they're not different sides. They're
No.
all following the same scenario. So there's going to be a European theater for this war. And then right about the time when the timing is right, China will take care of, will bomb
Taiwan?
Taiwan.
I think so too.
So we're going to have two,
But-
and that'll involve Australia. And because Australia, right now, I have a friend who's an Australian friend, and her husband's in the military, and they're on high alert. They're ready for this to happen.
But U.S. has to protect Taiwan
Has to protect Taiwan
because
and-
that's their buffer to Hawaii
and NATO.
and NATO. So this is going to, if things don't
World War
change,
III.
World War III. Now, would that just be for monetary gain? Because war, can mask inflation
No.
and boost the economy?
Well, not only that, they've also calculated what a limited nuclear war would do. And a limited nuclear war,
Limited.
nuclear war will reduce the population by some percentage. They have it down. Of course, those that are engineering this, all have underground bunkers, and they're fine. But so there will probably be a limit from what I can read. I mean, I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not a, what do they call it here? Maudu. In Thailand, they call it Maudu. Ma is doctor, and Du is see. So that's a person who can see the future.
Like Nostradamus.
Yeah. I'm not a Maudu, but from what I can see is there's going to be World War III, and the whole idea is to eliminate some of the population, a good percentage, allow governments to institute martial law. Control.
Doesn't this feel like a giant 150-year plan?
Yeah, and it's culminating.
Because I find it quite, it's quite a coincidence that war and disease completely aligns with exactly 100 years ago, almost to the date. How is that even possible? Like, could you have at least, it's almost like, and they're laughing. They're like, not only are we going to repeat it again, we're going to do it on the exact same days, just to almost laugh at you guys. I mean, if you did it on the, 2023, just give me a random year, exactly 2020, come on.
Right.
What are the chances of that? And that's aligning with the stock market crash as we're going into a recession and another war. It's two in sync.
Well, that's the thing. See, this will also, as you know, the also going on the side.
And can we talk about? I think we're okay to.
Yeah, I think so. They're knocking down the wars will also knock down will finish the knockdown of the supply chains. So we're going to have worldwide famine. We're going to have wars. We're going to have bioweapons introduced. We're going to have a limited nuclear war.
Won't we have issues as manipulation of climate as well?
That's the goal.
Look what we're seeing now here in Thailand. Let's say, I mean, it's March and it feels like it's where it's Thailand and we're in March and it feels like it's May, June with the rain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's usually a lot warmer, right? At this time.
Yeah.
March, April is usually really hot.
Yeah.
So the other big deal that's going to happen during all of this is that and as you know, China and Russia are getting away from the petrodollar, right? And they're getting away from the dollar. So the dollar is going to crash, which means that any monies that people have in the stock market, which is valued by the dollar, will become worthless. So the only thing that will have any value is crypto, and what they're doing now. And you can, if you study crypto at all, you'll see that every government, every Federal Reserve,
making their own crypto.
Central bank is making their own. And so what I can foresee happening is that when this war begins, and the bioweapons are released, and all that sort of thing, and there's more martial law and all that, we're gonna at the end of it, what's gonna happen? We're gonna come out with just federal cryptos. Now, people will still have Bitcoin and Ethereum. They'll have that. They just won't be able to buy cars and houses. They won't be able to live with it. They'll have to do it just with each other or black market, because you can't control it, right? It's blockchain. You can't control crypto. But I don't think you'll be able to use it for legal commerce. It'll become illegal and stuff like that. And I just
yeah, that's why they're pushing. I want to look into this more. I read an article on that. There's a cryptocurrency out there. I don't have any, but it's obviously quite large. It's called XRP or Ripple, I believe. And apparently with Ripple, it doesn't need the internet to survive. It can survive off satellite signals. So if Elon Musk was to use that in his advantage and invest in Ripple, we could trade that and the entire internet doesn't need to exist. Because what they are going after, I think, next, it's not just going, and that's what's very scary. We're on YouTube, but we are so censored right now. We cannot, and because my account's not that large, let's say I don't have 1 million followers, right? They could, if they don't like this conversation, they could close the account down tomorrow, and I'm not able to make enough noise. What I think they're probably going to go after next is going to be, and everyone will say, well, I don't need YouTube. I'll do my own streaming on my own website.
Well, BitChute.
But I think they'll start to go after URLs. That will be next. And then all you have to do is be like, and that's where I believe they have so much power, because I did live in China. And if China doesn't want you to have access to a website and you live there, you need a VPN, right? So unless now VPNs will work for websites, but I have a feeling that certain websites, like people will have their YouTube videos banned, and then they just stream it from their URL. Well, if the U.S. government doesn't like your URL, that URL will not work in the country. And then we're going to be forced to be using VPNs and using an IP from where? North Korea or something to access something. Who knows?
Right.
So I think it's just
until all governments start prohibiting certain, then VPNs won't work, right? Well, right now you could use a South African one or whatever.
Well, that's the craziest part about China is you have a VPN. I need to download the application to get the VPN on my computer, but I can't get that application without a VPN. So unless you already have one, you need to come to my house with your computer to send me that and backdoor it. This is where it gets crazy.
Right, but it's going to go much further.
Right. What do you think so I like Jordan Peterson was saying something along the lines is, if you want complete control, again, at the end of the day, high level, 30,000 foot, this is purely about control. If you want to look at it, whether they're killing us with food, whatever, war, it's control, currency, it's control. Now, Jordan Peterson was saying, if you want to control a population, just every year, just push them an inch and another inch. And it's kind of like, I guess, the analogy of putting a frog in boiling water. And you don't really know you're in it until it's too late. But do you feel that the current situation, World War III, biological weapons, it's no longer that inch? Is this going to be just a massive push?
Yeah. It's we've accelerated, and we've hit that point.
So my question is, why don't they continue pushing an inch? Why all of a sudden are they going to do this massive push? Or is that part of the plan? Meaning, you push an inch until the point, but now you need to go to level 2.
Right.
Then you do
well, that's why it's called the Great Reset. That's why they're doing it. And they gave it a timeline. In 2030, they have a goal of having 500 million people left on Earth, and they should be genetically modified cyborgs. And that's the goal. That's the goal.
And that's why
will get there.
And that's why they've, and this is not conspiracy in this part. This is why we have 5G. 5G, from my understanding, the towers, they need to be it's not like 4G where they can be 20K. You need to be very close to each other. And eventually, and obviously high internet speed, that will be for car and transportation automation.
Right. And it'll be well, your facial recognition, you'll come out, you'll walk out of your hotel, you'll just say taxi. A taxi will show up, driverless.
Yes.
You'll get in.
Yeah.
It'll get you from your retina scan, it's gone. So it's the Internet of Things, or whatever it is. It's just that everything is on the grid. And as you know, I think last year, the federal, what's it called? Communications in the U.S. gave permission to Elon Musk to launch another 20,000 satellites, which I think he's done by now.
What team is he on? Is he on Team Elon? Is he Iron Man, or is he part of the plan?
He's confusing. It's
very confusing, right? Yeah. But I feel like
I think everybody's on their team.
I think so, because I don't think they let him get to that point if he's not on the team.
Exactly.
Right?
Same like Trump.
Just like Trump. You don't get to that, because they control the media.
Or if you're still alive, you're on their team.
That's what I mean. That's what I think.
Because they have no problem shooting people in broad
daylight. No, you can change you control the media, you can change. So I really think he's on that team, and maybe he didn't mean to be on that team. I think a lot of these people, they might
initially didn't have that intention.
But they can show up at your home and be like, you're on our team, or your whole family's dead.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Well,
Last,
I think Trump knew that too, and I
yeah,
think Trump performed his role. His role was to him
divide and conquer.
him and Pelosi were successfully. They were just heads and tails, same coin. Complete. We have two Americas now.
Mm. Yeah, and that's always if
So two Americas, Europe and Asia fighting. America will not become a third-class country within 2 years. That's what I see happening. America will fall apart.
just like the fall of Rome.
Yeah,
Essentially.
it's gone.
What well we must be at an hour and a half, right? Okay, well I want two points. Hey, the gorillas are coming. That's how we'll end this. Before that, I've always had a concern about maybe something that's out of our world's control. We heavily rely on technology now on the internet, and if let's say the power grid was to go out, like it'd be complete anarchy unless you lived in the bush. What would happen? Do we have any control over solar flares? And do you believe in this and you understand what they are and what they could potentially do to the power grid? And what if that was to happen? What would be the outcome?
Well, if a solar flare would be pure chaos.
And there's no way they don't have control over that. That's it. No. Okay.
What they have control over is local stuff with our atmosphere, our ionosphere, with HARP.
And they can inject in.
Well, you know HARP, right?
Well, yeah, I'm aware of HARP from, let's call chemtrail planes, and that was what's funny is these conspiracy theories, they were, a conspiracy theory. Now it's coming to light. And the best example, anytime I've had that argument with someone and they say, well, how can they control the weather?
HARP.
But I give them the answer. They make it rain in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
If you think they can do that publicly, imagine what they can do not publicly.
Mm-hmm. Earthquakes.
Correct. So back to I guess the question was the solar flares. They have no control over that.
No.
And have you done any research into that? Like, what are the odds of that happening? Because I feel like with our technology, that would kind of be pretty much the worst case scenario.
Well, yeah, a solar flare it's just I think our collective karma, our collective destiny. If it comes, it might be a good thing. It'll wipe out. It'll get even them. It's even them.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it will wipe it out and put us back to starting over again.
Not that far back. Put us back to probably 120 years, 150 years.
Beautiful. I'd love it.
Right. We bring us back to like pre-industrial revolution.
Fantastic.
Okay, our last thing. What were we even discussing with the gorillas? What was it? Well, okay, let's finish that.
We were talking about food.
I told you today we're going off on tangents. It's not planned.
Yeah,
I hope you enjoyed it. I think sometimes it's better to structure it this way. If it's too interviewee style, it can be a bit.
Yeah.
So let's finish this off with the gorillas and food, and we'll wrap it up from there.
All right. So gorillas, anyway, as I was saying, they were they sit around and they eat, and they're what they call hindgut fermenters. So and the reason they are is because the foregut fermenters are the cows, right? They have 4 stomachs, and those stomachs are just sitting there fermenting, right? And they're producing. Why? What is fermentation? Fermentation is a very inefficient way of producing energy, but it does produce energy. Okay. So the cows are doing that, and they're burping all the time, and they're foregut fermenters. The hindgut fermenters are like gorillas, and there are certain cattle and things like that
that have a single stomach at this.
Yeah, single stomach, but they've got a large colon, a large cecum,
and the
hindgut. So they're fermenting
because they are vegetarian. The gorilla is a
Right,
vegetarian,
right.
essentially.
Yes. No, they are.
Well, they eat
occasionally, not like chimps. Chimps will eat.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
But the gorilla, yeah, very rare. Very rare. I mean, yeah. Oh, but it's not like the chimps go on hunts.
Yeah.
But the gorilla gets 50% of its energy from fermentation. So it's a very important part of its thing. So now it's the length of the small intestines to the large intestines. It's that length and that ratio that determines the animals what they're eating mostly. Now, as I said, whatever you get in your small intestine is you're going to absorb quickly and get energy quickly, and the large intestine means you're going to have to ferment it. So anyway, where do we fit? It turns out that we actually have a longer small intestines than a large intestines, right? Which even the chimps don't have that, who are eating fruit and swinging in the trees and things like that, who do get a lot of energy. So we're close in that regard. we are closer to the herbivores.
Mm.
Okay, not the carnivores, but the herbivores. And then we still have the hind gut. So we're a mix, but we're not anywhere near the carnivore or even the omnivore. So as it turns out, our natural diet is plants. To eat other than that, you have to teach people from an early age. If you took a child from any country and any culture who's just old enough to sit up, and you put them in a playpen with a rabbit and an apple, they'll all chew on, lick, eat the apple, and play with the rabbit.
Mm.
You put that same rabbit and a new apple in a cage with a baby lion, with a baby tiger, and they will eat the rabbit and play with the apple. Instinct. If you get us before our instinct, if you get us before we become enculturated, you'll determine. So you'll grow up thinking. I mean, I've sit across from somebody who's from a village in China and that eats live monkey brain.
Yeah,
and they're going to say, "What are you talking about? Life's not worth living if I can't have monkey brain once in a while."
but
You know,
if they didn't know that from childbirth,
right,
then yeah.
right.
What
Or bull testicle. It doesn't matter.
What are your thoughts on? I think the argument some people will say, no, you're not a meat eater at all. You're more like almost raw. You said you're not so much raw vegan, but raw vegetarian. You really try to focus on that side. But on the vegan side, you'll eat eggs or no?
Occasionally.
Okay. The argument people will say for meat and cooked meat is that there's a higher dosage or say concentration of protein bioavailability getting from cooked meat compared to your vegetables. Is that true, or what's the argument there?
No, that's a very good point. When we talk about protein, what we're talking about amino acids, there are 20 amino acids, okay? Every animal that eats, there are what they call essential amino acids and non-essential. Essential are ones that they cannot make within their bodies, so they have to get it from outside. The non-essential ones are, once they get the essentials, they can modify them to produce the
non-essential being like, you talk about something to mean.
Glutamine.
Glutamine. I deal with one called L-theanine, L-tyrosine, non-essential amino acids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's about 8, 9 essential, and the rest are non-essential. So you've got to get the essentials. So when they talk about a complete protein, what are they talking about? They're talking about one really that has all of the essentials.
What are the essentials?
Well, there's the branch chains, the lysine,
beta glucan, or no?
No, beta glucan is something different. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, so there's 8 of them, and then you have to get those in your diet, otherwise you're going to be malnourished. Okay. Now all of those are found in plants. All of those are found in meat. And all of those are found in mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's no place you can't get them. Okay, and in terms of percentages, I got to show you a chart. It's pretty much the same. It's not that different.
Even in terms of the protein itself.
Well, the amino acid.
Okay.
Is the protein.
Okay, so for example, like I think the carnivore diet people will argue and say, yeah, I can eat, how much of, I guess the weight, let's call it like 30 grams of broccoli, let's say 30 grams of broccoli or 50 grams or whatever. And let's say there's 6 grams of protein, but you're not actually getting that 6 grams of protein fully because that's not all bioavailable. Is that true?
Which in the plant?
Like if you go and take a nutrition, go online and take, okay, I have 50 grams of broccoli in terms of weight. There's 6 grams of protein within that broccoli, but I'm actually not getting that 6 grams. Not all of it is bioavailable. No,
it is. Okay. In fact, in a plant, it's more bioavailable because it's actually our natural diet. And think about it. If I eat a big complex protein, I've got to break it down into its constituent amino acids because my intestines can only absorb amino acids. You can't absorb a protein. You can only absorb an amino acid.
Okay, I got it.
So you've got to break it down first. So the more you have, more energy, the more work required to break it down and then absorb it is when you're eating a steak. But in a plant, you're going to have smaller proteins, less. It's easier to break down, absorb the amino acids because it's the amino acids that we need. We don't have a protein need. We have an amino acid need. All right. And just like we don't have an all fat need, we need omega-3s and omega-6s. That's it. We get those, and we're going to make all the rest. Carbs are carbs. So, and those are the 3 macronutrients. So, the difference is when you get the plant, you also get phytonutrients. You also get bioavailable minerals. You know, there's magnesium, calcium, and there's more magnesium. There's more calcium in spinach than there is in milk. Only it's bioavailable.
And iron. And
yeah. So you get all of that. And then the other thing, the very, very important thing is you get this fiber. And the fiber, you need to have undigestible fiber, which is cellulose. So it was only digestible by microorganisms. So as it's going down, it's cleaning the gut. Now carnivores have a very short gut. Okay. Their gut is only about 3 times the length of their trunk. Okay. Vegetarians, the length of their gut is 8 to 9 times their gut, their trunk. So for example, ours is 30 feet or 10 meters, our gut. So you figure my torso is what? Maybe a meter? Not even.
Yeah, not even a meter.
Not even a meter. So 10.
10.
It's pretty high. That's the ratio. So that long ratio is because you need plants to be going through there and cleaning it out. And then when you look at right where the small intestines enters the large intestines, it's called the ileocecum valve, right? And then it goes in, and there's a little cecum, which is a pouch hanging off here. From that cecum is the appendix. So now, if I'm eating food that doesn't have fiber, doesn't have cellulose, it's going to go in. It's not going to go down. It's some of it's going to fall down into the cecum, but there's no movement, and it's just going to go up this way. So my cecum will contain stuff for decades. So when they say death begins in the colon, what they're talking about is the cecum, and only prolonged fasting or colon hydrotherapy can clean out the cecum, and you've got to clean it out. I had a woman who had an anaphylactic reaction to corn. She almost died with the corn at the age of 12. So
she couldn't.
She had the kind of allergy where like people that get a bee sting, they're going to die. They have to give themselves a shot of adrenaline, right? Same thing. She got that anaphylactic reaction, so she couldn't eat corn anymore. So she came to my clinic. She was in her late 30s, I think, or early 40s, with cancer, breast cancer, and on her 18th colonic, a piece of corn came out.
From 30, 12 years old. My God.
So where was it? It was in the cecum, but it's the only place it could be.
Yeah.
So I'm just showing you that cecum, it remains, it doesn't move. It becomes full of that. So anyway, what's cleaning out the cecum is that fiber. So as you're eating fiber, it brushes it out and cleans it out. The appendix is the nursery for microorganisms. That's where we keep all of our microorganisms to replenish us if we need.
What happens if you lose your appendix?
Well, then you don't have that nursery. You don't have all these extras.
I don't have mine.
You can get a dysbiosis really easily. So you've got to eat healthy foods.
They've taken it out when I was in Taiwan, but they did microsurgery, microscopic, couple holes. No, I don't have a scar or anything. Just pop, and
wow.
I don't know. They said it was going to burst. I think they said I had an hour.
Wow.
But I don't know if it's the surgeons making money, because in Taiwan, like, their healthcare is amazing. Like, I remember I was in the hospital for 3 days and paid like $100 or something.
Wow.
So I'm not sure. Is there a certain time where maybe I would need to get that taken out? There's just
rarely. If it bursts, if it ruptures, you have to.
Yeah.
Usually, I've had people with a severe appendicitis. We can get through it.
Well, because Hans, you're doing a juice cleanse now, right? How's that going? You're probably tired,
It's
eh?
terrible.
Yeah, your
I'm
energy.
so tired.
Yeah,
What are you drinking?
Well, carrot juice, veggies and fruit juice.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I would do just the veggies.
just the veggies.
Just veg. Don't do pure carrot juice. That's sweet. If you've got any kind of candida in your body, it's loving it.
I'm adding some turmeric and
what about ginger?
ginger. Yeah.
A good basic juice recipe is you use cucumber and celery for your volume of water, and then spinach, kale, broccoli. You can do that to get your to get all your phytonutrients. Then add some lemon because you might have bitterness from the plants, and then you add a couple apples to take away the sourness from the lemon, and then you wind up with like an exotic lemonade, not too sweet, just sweet enough to enjoy it. But if you're doing like beet juice or carrot juice, it's easy to drink because it's so
Tastes good.
sweet. It's so sweet. But if you're feeling terrible, if it's only day 2 and 3, that's push through. I did 30 days, and you'll
30 days.
30, yeah, easy.
And we can survive.
Not only survive, thrive. 60. Watch a video called "Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead." Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. It's on everything: Netflix, YouTube. Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. This guy did it for 60 days. Joe.
Oh yeah. No, I've heard of this. Yeah.
But you can do it. You can not only do it, you get a chance. You get a renewal. You get your body renewed, and it's easier to do than a water fast. The water fast, you do actually run out of energy after 2 weeks. But with a juice fast, you're like, you're still running around. You get extremely alkaline, clear-headed. If you find yourself a little bit like spacey, just you take some sea salt and take like a teaspoon of sea salt, put it in a half a glass of water, and just drink it. Do that a couple times a day. It gives you your salts and stuff like that. But just get through this part. Go get a colonic, get your colon cleaned out. But actually,
where could they do that in Thailand or in Phuket? A colonic?
Tanya Pura is the only place.
Tanya Pura?
It's the only place I know of. Yeah, and my nurse is there.
Okay.
Kun A. So anyway, she, yeah, I would do that, but just push through it. Get away from so sweet because you don't want to change your microflora. Yeah.
And how much are they drinking every day of
as much
this
as you
juice?
can, minimum 2 liters.
2 liters
minimum.
And like, is that do you fast? Like, do you do a 16-hour fast and then get going, or?
No, you do this all day.
No, but I mean, like from the last one, you'd say take.
Well, that's if you're eating.
Okay, so you don't need to be fasting.
Not if you're juicing. So you don't need a 18-hour gap between your last meal and first meal. You don't.
What's the major difference between a juice fast and a water fast in terms of health benefits?
Well, a juice fast is not a fast; it's a feast. Okay, it's just basically a liquid diet, and you're getting more nourishment, you're getting more nutrients in 1 liter than the average person gets in a month, because the amount of vegetables that go in 1 liter you couldn't eat.
Yeah.
So you're drinking 2 liters, 3 liters, you're getting, all this, so far from malnourished. So you're getting a ton of nourishment. And you're getting an 90 to 95% is water. So you're flooding. In other words, you're changing the water in your aquarium.
Should you be doing a coffee? Is it
enema? No.
Yeah. No.
It's not. Well, I mean, you can. That's good for your liver. That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But so that's what a juice cleanse is. But when you're on a juice cleanse, it's a cleanse. It's not a fast. It's a cleanse. You're cleaning and you're supplying all these nutrients. You're getting extremely alkaline because all these plants have minerals like magnesium and calcium. You're getting very alkaline.
What about
water is different?
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I was going to interrupt there. Yeah. So it's a water fast. Is that more for the health benefits because would the word be rejuvenating your cells in that sense, where you're kind of shedding, like as we shed skin, but like internally your cells are almost, would you say mitochondria? It's like rebuilding itself.
Well, you do that with the juice feast as well. You are rejuvenating. You're doing that too. But the water fast is different because as long as you're drinking juices, you're still on the glucose roller coaster. Your glucose is going to go up and your insulin is going to go up. You're still metabolically very active and all that sort of thing. When you're on water, you go into ketosis. Okay, you're on water. You start burning fat, and then your body, so your ketones will be really high, your glucose will be low. And what happens is your body now needs glucose, so it goes on a scavenging hunt to find all of the non-viable tissue in your body to eat and recycle. So what is a non-viable? Cysts, tumors, plaques in your artery. Anything that is not part of your physiology will be eaten and recycled. So basically, by doing a water fast, you totally clean house. You get a renewal.
What is a program or protocol you would recommend for a water fast? Like in terms of what are you drinking? How much water per day? Do we add salt? How many days can we do it?
Yeah, well, again, you can do, if you get over 2 weeks, you're going to need some supervision.
Yeah, no. But I mean, like if I do 48 hours is probably.
That's nothing. Just drink water. That's nothing. But that's the hardest part. The hardest part is the first 3 days. Day 4, you're going to wake up with no appetite. You'll say, "Oh, I'm great. You just got to get through the first 3 days, because the first 3 days you're in a battle with appetite.
How long have you done water fast?
18 days.
You've done 18 days, but obviously that's not recommended. Let's say
Well, it is. It is. You can do that, and you
You
should do that.
with supervision.
Well, yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on how sick you are. Most people, you can just drink a ton of water, and like I said, twice a day, give yourself some Himalayan sea salt. Just do that, rest, and you will be a new person.
What if
If you got any viruses or whatever that was going on,
I was to do a juice cleanse, should I do a water fast then a juice cleanse, or a juice fast?
no, do juice 5 days,
Yeah.
or do juice 5 days. Then you can do 5 of water and then 5 of juice.
Okay, so Hans, you ready? You got another 5.
5, 5, 5.
5, 5, 5, right, bud?
Or 7, 7, 7.
So let's do 7, 7, 7. What day are you on for juice?
5 juice, 7 water, 5 juice.
Fucking hell.
5, 7,
Oh,
5. You can do it.
I'll do like 1, 1,
You'll
1.
be a new person. You'll be a new person.
I 100% believe it. I think I could do it, but also you'd have to do it based around it's almost like you're going on a vacation. I don't think mentally I'd be able to do this. Mentally, I wouldn't be. You couldn't go to the
On
gym.
juice, you could.
On juice, you could. On a water, like, what do you recommend the
No, the
person
first
does?
2 weeks you're fine.
On water?
Yeah.
You can go out, you can go to the gym, you can...
Well, you wouldn't go to the gym, but
Right.
you can go out and go walking.
Could you go for a run?
You'll be feeling energy. You wouldn't.
No.
There's no need to. There's no need to, because you're cleansing.
Kind of go, take it easy a bit.
Take it easy. Go to the store. You can do what you need to do, but you're not going to go to the store that much.
What about
to-
working, like brain power? You have is there issues? Do
Your
you feel
body's going to make
fatigued?
you're going to feel fatigued, especially depends how toxic you are. So what I tell people, if it's their first water fast, let's do some colon hydrotherapy. First of all, switch to eating just salads for like a week. Big, wonderful, fantastic
That's
salads.
what I do every day for lunch. That's where I'm at.
And then nothing else. Just eat salads
Yeah.
for a week. Then go in and do a juice fast for like 7 days, 10 days, 14 days. Do a good cleanse. After that, then you could do some water if you want to. Or after that, go back to eating, but eat a healthy diet. You just need to get your body used to it, and then do water. But do water 5, 7 days, 10 days is nothing.
When you're on that water fast, can you be adding cucumber infused
no.
lemon?
Water is water.
Okay. And at which point do you do the what's it called?
Enema?
The enema. At the end, like if you go to Tanya Pur, you do that at the very end?
A beginning, middle, and end.
Okay. And you would do 3. That's easy. That's the protocol. All right. Well, we probably ended up talking 2 hours,
Yeah,
right?
it's 2 hours.
I knew this would happen.
Yeah.
I think we'll do another one probably in a couple months again. Okay. Well, thanks for Dr. Thomas Lodi for joining us again. I'll make it easy where to find him. And you can just find him on YouTube, Dr. Thomas Lodi, or Instagram, Dr. Thomas Lodi. I'll kick it back to
Or
you.
have a website, drlodi.com.
Is there anything, we'll kick it back. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you're doing people can look out for? Any seminars, anything like this on the island, or anything you're looking to plug?
Well, next Wednesday, the 30th, at, what time is it? 7 a.m. So you might be not up for it. But I'm going to be doing a webinar on cooked food. The name of the webinar is Cooked Food is Poison.
On Instagram.
No, it's a webinar.
So how would they find that?
Just go to my website, drlodi.com.
drlodi.com. Dr. Lodi, not Dr. Lodi.
Or Dr. Thomas Lodi. They're both the same.
You'll figure it out. Yeah.
drlodi.com.
Yeah.
And then just look for that. It's on there. And sign up for the webinar. And then you just sign up. You don't need to pay anything.
Yeah.
Just sign up. And then at that time, tune in. And it'll be on cooked food. It's called Cooked Food is Poison.
Okay.
But every Monday, if you can, 7 a.m., I'm doing live on both Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, and if they join that webinar, I'm assuming it's almost a Zoom meeting that they're
This
in.
is what it is, yeah.
Yeah, so turn your microphones off.
Yeah.
Turn your microphones off, guys. Yeah.
And then also, if you have any health, especially if you have cancer, I do consultations. So you just
Okay.
what you need to do is just go on my website again, book a consultation. If you or a loved one has cancer or anything like that, it usually takes a minimum of an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't stop until we're done. And at the end, I give you a recommended plan on what to do considering your situation. So let's say you're living in, I don't know, Africa, and you can't travel right now and you're stuck. Okay, so how are we going to make you cancer free where you are? or you're over here, whatever. So, and then,
What about if you don't have cancer and to call it like preemptive?
and you don't want to get cancer.
Right.
Yeah,
They could book I'd be interested in that. Book a consultation and they could come see you. And I'm assuming you would walk them through their lifestyle and just kind of give some suggestions, or do you create a program? How does that
have a
work?
program.
I'll create a program. And now, are you creating a program every time to the individual that you consult with based on like their lifestyle, what they're eating, their daily habits?
Right. I am, but I'm getting them towards the real, my goal is to get them into a human lifestyle, a human healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
But you got to keep in mind, we're all the same species. We all have the same needs, basically.
Yeah.
Right. We have different appetites and different tastes. That's what's different about us.
Yeah, because I'm assuming you'll get clients that will come in and like you want to change a lot, but maybe they can't get rid of meat.
Right.
And then do you work around
Sure.
that?
Yeah. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to be vegan. You don't have to be vegetarian.
Yeah.
You don't have to. And if you're going to eat that stuff, let's make sure you're doing it in the best way to stay healthy.
Okay, that wraps it up. I'm sure he'll be back again soon. Lovely having you again. Thanks a lot. And see you later. I never know how to finish this.
What do you got?